Hello, welcome to Lord Havoc's Marvel Champions Custom Content Extravaganza. I have another episode of the Creator Spotlight for you. This creator is a big fan of the Turtles and the Masters universe and stuff like that. Has been on the show before, has been featured on the show before when we did his Skeletor scenario, and we've even played a game together. It's a real pleasure to introduce Inkwire. How you doing?
Good. Pleasure to be here, man.
Awesome, really awesome. Inkwire is on call, so he might have to dash off every now and again. So hopefully, fingers crossed, that doesn't happen. We'll see how we go. Uh, Inkwire, if you could just do like a introduction about yourself, just talk about yourself. The origin of your name would probably be cool too, because your TTS name is
Oh,
Dragon Inklings, but you're called Inkwire. So
yeah. Well, the Dragon Inklings is just because I let my kids name this thing, and Inklings has always been a joke that my children would be Inklings. But that's
ah,
my name is just a really, really old World of Warcraft name from days when I led a guild with my wife when we were like in our early 20s. Um, but yeah, other than that, and it being a cheesy pun, there's nothing real fancy behind that name.
oh,
Just an old school one. Um, but
so,
yeah, as far as background for me, I'm fairly old. I come from an era when the Ninja Turtles and He-Man were new IPs, and back in '94, I got into Magic: The Gathering and played that pretty solid for 10 years, and kind of brought attention to it in small town I grew up in, and did lots of tournaments and stuff, so became familiar with that, and then got into board games when I was older. I got some technical background in robotics and machining and engineering and that sort of thing. So that's kind of like a quick overview of me. And as far as uh yeah, the content and everything here, that was never something that was really planned. I kind of fell into it backwards. Back in 2020, I had seen this game had come out, and I thought, oh yeah, that looks like it's something right up my alley, and you can play solo, so that seems all right. And then there was a little bit of social distancing and stuff, and so solo games became a little more popular. So I was looking for more content, and on Board Game Geek, I think is how I stumbled across the Discord and found the community and everything. So I've been hooked up with them since like February 2020, I want to say.
cool.
February, March, something like that.
Awesome. And so you touched on the fact that you play solo. Do your family play with you as well?
Yeah. As time has gone by, certainly different kids have shown interest at different times. Daughters definitely tend to be more interested in the female characters,
Mm.
and my boy always liked like He-Man and the big, strong, tough guys. So no, they've played a bit. My wife plays a bit, but really hasn't now in a few years. And even myself, I slowed down for quite a while there and just did some basic play testing, and then uh, kind of have been focused on the design. And I do a bit of play testing, but I also let a lot of the community give me their feedback and go from there. So I'm definitely not playing as many games as I used to these days.
Do you design with your family, with like your daughters in mind? Like, have you done the female characters because
Well,
of your daughters?
actually, yeah, some of the ideas actually on the table here, if you look at the top right
Mm.
corner, there's a super dinosaur guy there, and he is one that was from a series of comic books that my kid read
Cool.
called Super Dinosaur. So yeah, this was very much like a design for him. Unfortunately, the community has shown zero interest in it, and to be honest, I play tested it, and it could use some work. It's not horrible though, but the idea basically was the dinosaur is always putting on different suits, and the suits are always like breaking apart as he fights.
Yeah,
So it's like giant dinosaur robot
gotcha.
with metal parts flying everywhere. And so the theme was kind of that too, that the suits get put on, and when he receives damage, instead of applying to his own hit points, it applies to the gear, and then the gear blows up over time.
Right. I'd be willing to bet that the lack of interest is not because of any quality. It's just because nobody would have a clue who this character is.
Exactly, and I recognize that. That was kind of the thing when I told my boys. I said, "You got to realize, but this is going to be a bit of a niche." But for the right person, maybe, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
So,
everybody loves dinosaurs.
That's an example of one where I did work on one to do with a family member. When I designed She-Ra, my intention was, and Tila for that matter, actually, was always that my daughters might enjoy playing them because they originally were saying they just didn't want to play boy characters. So
yeah.
But they didn't have like any specific design impact or anything other than real simple feedback of, yeah, I liked this or I didn't like that. Awesome. Most of my feedback comes from the community at large, and a little bit of small group playing outside of my family as well.
Well, like we touched on, we're of a sort of similar vintage, I think, because I also remember when the Turtles came out for the first time and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's why we get along so well, because we're at the same generation. You have got a heap of stuff here, and I don't want to go through. Well, I do want to go through all of them, but we don't have time to go through all of them. But I just want to touch on just the huge amount of stuff that we've got here, right? So we've got different aspects for aspect cards, custom aspect cards for Master Universe. You've got aspects for TMT. You've got your own aspect Shinobi, which I want to get back to in a second. I really want to talk about that, right? Because that's an impressive piece of work.
Yeah, there's a few like kind of lump things we'll want to touch on. I assume.
And then we've got the Turtles and the turtle parallel characters, I suppose. Casey and all that sort of stuff.
All the extra characters, and there's still more to come, of course.
Oh, of course, right? And then, I just learned about one yesterday, which was pretty cool. And then you got the Masters Universe characters here, which is very cool. And we've started into the Thundercats, which is cool.
I did not start into the Thundercats. That was actually Super TNT. He reached out to me a while back and mentioned that he was interested in doing like a Thundercats, and we were just talking about some He-Man stuff, and I said, go for it. I can maybe help you find some artwork and everything and maybe do a bit of playtesting. I think the playtesting part I unfortunately kind of fell short on for him, but when it came to this guy, both of us had kind of the same thought where we'd seen the art and we saw that Tigra, he kind of goes cloaked and stuff, and cloaked my two status cards, one which I designed with Design Hacker, and then the other one I did by myself, but cloaked in particular, he thought would maybe work well with it, and he asked if that was okay, and I said, yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to work on the hero with you as like a collab. So yeah, we pounded that out over a course of, I don't know, a month and a half, and cool. I can't say I've play tested it as much as I'd like, but I've actually just started having it hit the table recently. So.
I'm glad you interjected, because I was going to say, where are the rest of them? And did you know that?
Yeah, he's got all of them. He's the guy to go to for Thundercats.
Yeah, and I was going to say, did you know Super TNT's created all the Thundercats? Like, is it like piece of collab?
No.
Yeah, he's
no, I would never want to step on his toes with that project, especially since he let me know about it before he even started it. So.
Yeah, he's a champion. And you got scanning camera cards here. We've got Voltron as well, which is really. I was really excited to see Voltron.
These ones are really weird. Well, not weird, but they're like random vestibular, I guess, things. So these were the two very first custom cards I made, and that's the only reason why they even exist here. They actually were on Board Game Geek, or still are, I believe, posted on there.
Cool.
So there were people, apparently, I found as recently in the last year, that still know about those two cards and still use them, because I made them way back when Hulk was pretty new and everybody was very frustrated with him. And I thought, rather than remaking the hero and stuff like that, it would be easier to just make a couple of basic cards that just work with him.
And you're obviously reading the Immortal Hulk storyline for the Green Door.
Well, to be honest, I was just desperate to come up with something that would work as a mechanic to help him out. And I was like, the Green Door, that works. I do know basically the story, but no, I don't. I haven't read it.
Oh,
and Voltron is I'm not even really much of a fan of Voltron, to be honest.
Hmm.
This is a 15 card set. I'll let you pull them out if you want there. It was because while I was working on my He-Man stuff, I came up with a mechanic called bonded, or bonding, and then a card becomes bonded. And the idea is that you could make a character, like an ally, either be an upgrade attachment or the ally. And working through that was interesting because just for balance sake, I had to make basically all their mechanics work so that you have to make that decision at the beginning, because I found if you had a character in play and you're like, hey, I'm going to try to like bond him onto something, what do you do with the damage or the other things that are on him? And so I made mechanic, like it does explain that in the rules that all that stuff transfers and everything, but rather just to keep it simpler, bonded cards, you'll notice, always go on to the target as soon as it's coming in play, or not at all. And then when it's bonded, it just goes kind of like the old magic cards, where you just, I assume you slide this underneath it and you slide it up to the line so you don't see the other stuff above, and then it's just extra text onto your ally.
Cool. So, can I ask why you? I mean, the bonded thing is cool. You know, but so does that mean you
Well,
could
and sorry,
technically put?
yeah, I didn't finish on that.
Oh,
So
sorry.
I came up with that idea, and then it was Veril, I believe,
Right.
or no, it was Stranger Danger, I believe. Yeah,
Okay.
Stranger Danger came into my channel and said, "Hey, that bonded mechanic would work really cool on like a Voltron character." And
Ah.
I found out later he meant like a Voltron hero.
Mm.
But once he said that, or he or they, I decided that I would just go ahead and make this
Just
whole set, and it just kind of morphed out of that. I was looking it over actually last night, and I definitely see a few more refinements I might do on it.
right.
But yeah, and it also ended up being the beginning of me making dual aspect cards, because I really liked the idea of keeping the colors to the different parts of the suit there, but then I didn't have a way that you could play them all in the same deck unless you were playing Adam Warlock. So the dual aspect is that it actually, as long as you can add it to your deck with one of those aspects, then you can add it to your deck. So in the case of one that has like leadership, protection, aggression, or justice coupled with basic, it can just go in any deck.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So, the idea of Voltron came from the gaming term called Voltron.
Yeah, it was really just Stranger Danger made the comment, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure, why not? And it evolved from there, and it just made sense. And there are
Awesome.
some people that I've heard comments from, they really like the set. I can't say that I've put as much love into it as I maybe should, but if anybody does play test my stuff and they make comments, even if it's something that I've shelved for a long time, I'll always take another look at it.
I'm a huge
Oh.
Voltron fan, so I'm definitely excited. So, am I reading this right though? That you could technically put the green line on Shira? Like it doesn't have
No,
to be Peach.
well, you can attach it to an ally. Yes, it could be a She-Ra ally.
Right.
So it has to attach to an ally. So the idea would be that
Oh, I
you
see.
don't have to put it on them, but they can go inside the vehicle, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Awesome. I'm glad you did the
Yeah,
lion
and the
version.
pilots were added later because people wanted things that kind of had the pilots add best extra abilities and stuff to it all. So
Yeah. And you did the superior lion version instead of the spaceship version, which I appreciate.
I really just looked for the best art I could find.
And that was the lions.
like like I said, I was never a huge Voltron fan. I knew of it, but I didn't really dig into the anime stuff. The only kind of borderland anime stuff I saw back then was Transformers.
Cool. You touched on the cloaked status before. This is the cloaked status that you've created, and we've had a couple of conversations about this because I also have a cloaked status card.
You sure do.
This graphic is awesome. I'm so very jealous of this graphic. It's great.
It took me a long time. I'm not good at this sort of thing. It takes me way too long to do stuff like that. But thank you, I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
it's very very cool. So you did do it yourself. It just took you bloody ages.
Yeah, it took me a bit between the graphic and the wording. I was working on it at the same time, so I was
Yeah.
constantly going into the AIM channel and talking with guys there about how I could possibly word this. And for the most part, people just kept telling me to give up or to instead just work it into an attachment. But I was kind of stubborn about it because I had already, when I was coming up with this, I already knew that I was going to have it associated with one of my Shinobis and also with Shredder and a number of other things. So
Mm.
I just had to make it work in order for all my future project. So while I was going back and forth with them, I would spend like 2 or 3 hours every evening for like a month trying to figure out how to make a graphic that I liked. So yeah, it didn't take a short period of time for me.
Cool, awesome. And so yeah, so I was going to ask this: did you make it for Shredder, or did you make it for something else and then give it to Shredder?
So I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm actually gonna rewind your question.
Okay.
And I'm gonna just kind of mention about, because we're really talking about Shinobi a bit here, I think.
Right.
So I got my Shinobi rulebook that I just made up, and this also took me forever to
Mm.
do. So hopefully there's not too many errors and stuff in it, but it basically explains the whole concept of how Shinobi works. And what the reason why this came about was because when I decided I wanted to do the turtles, I want, as I was designing them, I was like finding that I would come up with a few different things that were really cool, like ninja moves and stuff that might be associated with Michelangelo or Leonardo or something like that. But
Yeah.
uh, then I'd be like, oh, well, that would be really neat to get on the other guy. So I started designing some aspect cards. But as I was doing that, it just started feeling way too bland and like I was just reusing the same thing. So I wanted a way to customize them that was an extra layer on top of what the hero was. So instead of it just being, here's Raphael and his cool thigh moves, it's just his personality is supposed to be in the deck, and then all of his like skills that he develops are going to be through the Shinobi deck. Was the idea, and that kind of freed me up a bit more to think about like what the characters themselves were rather than just like what are the things that you see them do? Are they doing backflips or things like that? You know what I mean?
Mm.
So, um, yeah, I really, it freed me up in that way. And then I focused in on the characters and I decided all the character core designs. And then Shinobi took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do with that. At first, it was just one, like a whole new aspect. It was just like a fifth aspect, kind of like determination.
Yep.
But I found then I was just recycling too many ideas. And as I went, I thought, why not instead, yeah, just figure out ways to break apart the concept of what these guys are. Like Bushido seemed like a real obvious one right off the bat because samurais and Leonardo have always been kind of a thing. And the taijutsu, it took me forever to find a word. Maybe other people knew this, but taijutsu is like an encompassing word for martial arts with hand to hand what or combat and also with like things like tonfas and nunchucks and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So so I broke all of the moves into that one, and then it turned out in the comic books there was this whole thing about Kuzikiri that they had learned, and they'd all like learned some magic before they fought against the Rat King and stuff. So I was like,
Cool.
oh, perfect. This one can just be a whole thing about them doing magic,
Mm.
and then the last one was the reason why I brought over with this one was ninjutsu, and it was kind of like I had the idea of having a cloaked status, and I figured I'm just gonna make this one all about working around that mechanic and the focus of trying to make it feel genuinely like you're being cloaked. Which I know that sounds lame, but um
Why does that
it
sound
was
lame?
very hard to come up with a like a give and take mechanic on it. Sorry, what was that?
Why does that sound lame? I think it sounds cool.
Oh no, like I guess it doesn't really describe anything.
Oh, okay.
Saying something, I wanted it to really feel like itself. You know what I
Gotcha.
mean?
Okay.
But at any rate, it was really that when I was starting to design it, if I gave a bonus to a guy, I'm like, okay, yeah, I can give a bonus to the attack, and that kind of makes sense. But then it just became I'm just placing it on the character, and then I'm immediately using it, right? So what was the point? Why didn't I just make a card that just gave +2 attack?
Mm.
But then I was like, well, it kind of makes sense that you could thwart a bit more if you were hidden, and it makes sense that you could defend better if you were hidden. But then the decision making still kept on becoming a little too much of just throw it on and use it immediately. And it was the second trigger mechanic that I feel was kind of like the aha moment, because it made it not only so there was lots of different ways to work with the mechanic um, on within the Shinobi set, but it also made it so that there was like a give and take mechanic to when you play it against minions. Like when you're playing against Shredder or any of the ninjas and stuff, they'll come into play with the cloak status. But that gives you the opportunity. You can decide, do I am I willing to take that heavy hit from them?
Mm.
Or do I just do like 1 or 2 damage and knock off that thing, kind of like a quick knockoff of a tough status? Or do I have enough damage to just blow through the whole thing and take them out all at once, right?
Mm.
And if you think that you want to be more efficient, you could say, yeah, I'm going to take the hit on this next turn, and then the turn after, he won't have that status card on him, so now I can take him out a bit easier, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you have an
So
interest in Japanese sort of history and warfare before the
not
turtles?
Not at all.
No.
Not at
Okay.
all. I am a very much a poser, and I don't and try to like pretend to really know it. It's all for theme, and I've learned only what I've learned from looking up stuff.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, at any rate, so that was the whole cloak thing. Is
Yeah.
really it was just about trying to develop the ninjutsu aspect of the shinobi,
Yeah.
but Shredder became a very obvious and
Yeah.
it took me all of about 2 seconds to realize, oh yeah, I'm just gonna make it so Shredder can have more than one cloak status on him
Mm.
and work all the mechanics around that. Which, again, I was very fortunate. The community seemed very interested right at that moment, and a lot of people playtested and got brutally Ronan the Accuser level destroyed by him a number of times. But he's definitely throttled in now and quite engaging.
Cool. It's the turtles are really intricate. I mean, the whole Shinobi thing and stuff. Are they the ones that you've spent the most time on?
The Ninja Turtles as a
Yeah,
whole,
as a whole,
or
the Turtles
uh,
project.
I guess it's kind of weird. Because He-Man I made when I was brand new to the community, before I even got into much for playtesting. I
Mm.
had like done a little bit of downloading and printing stuff, mainly just villains, because I kind of originally approached it thinking, well, I can play against villains, and if they're too hard, then I can say they're too hard. If they're too easy, I can be like, oh, these are poorly designed, and otherwise I can just enjoy them. But I was really hesitant to even try other people's heroes, because I was thinking,
Mm.
it's going to take away the fun. They're going to make it too overpowered or
Right.
something like that, right?
Yep. Well, there you go.
But then, it was actually, again, this I know was Stranger Danger.
Mm-hmm.
I posted in the request channel when I was new, hey, somebody should make He-Man. And
Okay.
uh and then Stranger Danger said, yeah, you should.
Yeah.
And my initial response in my head was like, that is such a troll answer.
Right.
But I
It's
thought
true.
about it a bit,
Yeah.
and I looked at all of the different tools, and to my amazement, people like the great work Hitch has put into stuff, but many others. Like I mentioned the other day, Nugget was another one. Odysseus laid a lot of the groundwork to the whole Discord, all that stuff. At any rate, they were willing to help me along, and I fumbled through it. And like this version of him is like so much better refined. I even found out like a year or two ago that there's a Spanish version of this still floating around, of an older version of this still floating around the internet that people actually have come to our Discord and asked for it from me. And I'm like, I don't even know where you got that.
That's so cool.
but but yeah, but yeah, this was my first one, and it took me a long time to figure them out. And I went right from him on to Shira, and Shira became a hot mess. And I felt that I couldn't design heroes, so I looked around and was still skeptical of a lot of people's heroes designs, but I really liked the graphics that Design Hacker had.
Mm.
So I tried out a few, and I enjoyed them. And so I kind of, him and I, he was kind enough to allow me to help influence a number of his designs to do with the original Fantastic Four, the campaign that he did, and well, what I counted it up the other day. I think it was 45 different heroes of his that he designed or whatever. I helped with playtesting and stuff, and really enjoyed that whole process of giving feedback and the back and forth with him.
Wow.
And he's a great guy for that. And as a result, when he kind of petered out a bit, I started looking at my stuff again, and I thought, I feel that I have a much better idea of what I want to do, and how to balance this and how to fix this. So I fixed the hero up within like a week or two into something that was much more stable, and decided to start going from there. So the He-Man stuff went from there, and then the truth is I would have gone a little bit further with it, but there is extremely limited quality art, and the lengths in which I had to go to make some of the card pool that I assume you're going to look at here in a bit, was very difficult.
Right.
So yeah, and I always loved the Ninja Turtles, and even though a couple other people in the community that don't seem to be active much anymore had made some stuff in it, they really hadn't been contributing anything anymore. So I figured, yeah, I'll have my try at it, and I've really enjoyed it. And so with them, because there's such a more plethora of art and stuff out there, and it's a much more active scene, that's probably why I've spent more time on it. But I have a lot of love for my He-Man stuff because I really cut my teeth on it, and I did make 3 villains as well, all of which I feel are pretty good. Hordak's a little brutal still, I think, but other than that, the other 2 are really good.
So He-Man was your first character. Who would you say is your favorite creation of yours?
Well, I don't know that I could say that. I could say a few highlights that I like of characters. I have a soft spot for He-Man just because he was my first, obviously. She-Ra, actually, I really like her. She's a 3-form one. She follows a whole storyline, basically, from comic books. There was a comic book run where if you remember at all from the old TV show, she was actually abducted by Hordak as a child and raised in whatever they called that place, wherever it was that She-Ra was. And in that, she was leading his forces. It was called Force Captain Adora. In the comic books, what they did is they made her a character called Tara, who came wearing a mask, and she invaded and all this stuff. And then she stumbled across He-Man, and then they find out they were twins, and the whole other story. So this one, now this is a 3-form one, the same kind. Like, do you know how to flip through the states on this one?
Yes.
You got all 3? Yeah, you've
I
been
was, I
going
was,
through
I
them
was
there.
doing it while you were talking.
Yeah, I see that now. At any rate, she has come with 2 ally minions that come out into play from her set in order to and they can be flipped one way or the other. So if they come out as when you're in Dispara form, then they're going to be your allies, and they're pretty weak. They don't do a whole lot, but you can get buffed or you can do things with them. And then if you decided to flip She-Ra, where are we here? Huzzah! these guys will immediately have a forced interrupt where they have to flip over and they become minions. And when these minions leave play, there's different effects. Ooh, actually, it looks like one of these cards did not get updated. Ignore the one there. This is the correct one.
Okay.
Well, when it leaves play, you set it aside again, and then She-Ra gets to draw a card. So it kind of incentivizes that between some of her other mechanics to sometimes do plays where you might want more minions in front of you just so you can get more buff from taking them out.
Right.
And with her design as well, the thing that I like asymmetry in things, and I don't know if a lot of people notice, but I made all of her stat line and her hand size add up to the same total on each form. And so the idea was that her hand size was going to end up being 3 on one of the characters and 7 on another. And I really enjoyed like playing around with trying to balance that in a way that, that actually worked without it being broken.
Right. How do you change from Despera to She-Ra?
The same way you change with all your 3 form.
Oh, right. Okay, I see. But did you? There's a template now for the 3-form heroes. Have you seen
Oh,
that?
is there?
Yeah.
Oh, I better get that.
Okay.
Is that on Hitch's table?
I don't know if it's on the table, but it's in the fonts. It's in the. If you go to Hitch's Google Drive, you can download the fonts and stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to find it. Stuff. Okay.
Let me just.
Thanks for the heads up. I did not know that.
Just so I don't look like a mean person, let me just make sure that's actually true. Here is, yeah, there it is, right there. Flipped hero upgrade, horizontal hero card template. Yeah, there. Cool. All right. So that's She-Ra.
I'll that tonight.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah, and I just enjoyed having her design based off of where she can only do certain things in other ones. Hela is another one that I really enjoyed. She's actually kind of like, I don't know. I'm constantly tweaking her because she was so difficult to balance, but she has 2 forms. So, like Ironheart.
Yeah.
The idea is that you could upgrade, but unlike Ironheart, the idea was that you could choose to stay as Hela and never turn into the goddess and still be like a fully valid hero. You would just play your deck and design your deck that way. And so it was supposed to be kind of like you either are playing Gamora or Gamora for a turn or 2 and then morph into like Doctor Strange, basically.
Okay, so you don't have to do it. It's not a force response; it's just an action. That's cool.
Yeah, it was it's because in the comic book back in the day, they also did that same plot line. And recently, if anybody watched the Netflix He-Man, they actually did that same story as well and had her become the goddess in He-Man Revolution, I think it was called. Came out early last year.
Awesome.
Anyway.
And then you got your villains. So
you
said, you got Master of the Evil villain, Skeletor, King Hiss, Hordak, which is very cool. Love it. And you've even created the modulars to go with them and stuff. There's just so much output here. And you said you've only been in the community for like 2 years, you reckon?
No. I've been here since the earlier stages, but I've only been making for like 2.5 years now.
Yeah, so you've been in the community for a while, but you've been making for 2.5 years. It's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive stuff.
Thank you.
So, including a whole bunch of aspects.
So yeah, and I mean, just as far as to wrap up with the He-Man stuff and kind of some of the design concepts and everything is, because I know you're probably wondering a little bit about how I approach game design or anything like that, and I'm kind of all over the place. But as I start, what I usually do is I'll kind of rough out a bunch of stuff on a piece of paper and flesh out the concepts that I want to do with certain heroes or villains and stuff. And as it goes forward, I usually figure out, like, I see a pattern. And so at that point, I'm very big on the idea of creative limitation. Not sure or if you're familiar with the
I
concept.
am, but for if you can just describe it for the listeners, that'd be great.
Yeah, yeah, it's just the idea that if you limit what you have access to, then it opens up the opportunity to be more creative. So, uh, like I said, when I started finding themes, I kind of was be like, okay, if this is the theme, I want to try to stick to that. And with the character in particular, it means then he has to have some of those same themes, while at the same time having another very unique mechanic or something that becomes the telltale for them. I kind of believe that you should be able to take a hero or a villain or something, and you should be able to say in like a pretty simple sentence a description of what it is. And if you have to kind of like add about 5 more sentences onto all the other things, then it's probably too complicated, and you probably haven't restricted your design enough. Or at least that's the case for me, I found.
Okay.
But yeah, so with He-Man, it became, especially after I got into Tila and Man at Arms, I asked Design Hacker if it was okay if I started really using the intensified status card that we had worked on together, which actually that was like a total accident. I'll just mention that briefly. He was designing for Halloween, like, oh, this would have been 3 years ago, I guess now. He was making Swamp Thing, and before he released him, he I had worked on so many things with him. He kind of just sent me in a private message an example of the status card for it. And I had been working night shift, and I was so tired when I read it. I misread it completely, but I understood it to be the mechanic that became intensified, which I guess you can take a look at.
Hmm.
And it was basically the idea that this is a status card that does nothing in itself, but if it is if a character has a status card on it, then this card will be discarded instead of the status card after like when it's resolving. So you got a stunned card on the guy and an intensified. Intensified goes off, and then the stunned remains. But then it can work the other way too. If they have tough status on them and the intensified's on there, and you do 1 or 2 damage to them or whatever, then the intensified would be dropped instead of the tough.
Okay.
So yeah, at any rate, I thought that was the mechanic he had designed, and I was raving on for like a paragraph about how like smart of a design and that's so cool and everything. And then he's like, "That isn't what I designed." And I read it again when I woke up, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're right. That isn't what you designed." But he's like, "You're right though. That is really cool. We should do that."
So you
And
designed it by accident.
yeah, but he at that point too, he did all of the actual, like, I am not trying to take credit for anything that Design Hacker has made. I he doesn't even use Photopea. He's his own thing with all of his stuff. He knows graphic design and all the rest of that. But yeah, with this one in particular, then he's like, yeah, we need to make a hero for it then. And so we brainstormed for a bit, and because the X-Men had just started coming out, figured Professor X was one that they weren't going to use and that you could kind of make sense with. And yeah, so that's why he has Professor X and Intensified on there. Now, Design Hacker didn't, to my knowledge, use that status card on anything else, but for me, I took that to be something that I could kind of like how Cloak has been integrated into a lot of the Turtle stuff. Intensified was integrated into a lot of that. King Hiss in particular is about status cards and Intensified and stuff like that. But
Cool.
yeah, and so that was the whole He-Man and everything was all about status cards and intensified, tough, and stun and all that junk. But I did, as I mentioned earlier, we did the bonded cards, and then I started doing those dual aspect cards, and I enjoyed that as well. Which you can actually pull those. I guess I can pull those up. Yeah, there's our dual aspect, and here's all the aspect cards.
That's a lot.
And
There's a lot of stuff.
a good chunk of those aspects are reskins. There
Mm.
are reskins in there for sure, but I was always big on the allies because I mean He-Man's all about all the different action figures, right?
Yeah.
Every episode was another commercial for like 3 more action figures, right?
Mm.
So that's really where I went with that. And the dual aspect, I found it really interesting. I did decide when I finished doing He-Man though that I was not going to really do dual aspect again, mainly because in order to create that same symmetry, where that there's, I decided, oh, okay, there's going to be 4 allies. That means every time I wanted to come up with a new card design for one of them, I had to come up with I had to come up with 6 cards.
Mm.
And each time I did that too, I realized as I'm adding more of these cards to the card pool that can be added to, say justice and leadership or whatever, um, it would dilute the pool too much and also like lead to like why would I pick non-dual aspect cards and that sort of thing too. So you'll also notice all of them are actually restricted to 1 or 2 in your deck.
Yeah.
And that's why. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that and some of the cool background stories of different characters that I didn't even know about. And at one point there, the player side schemes were the new thing. So I was like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And unfortunately, I had to redesign a few of mine along the way because as Fantasy Flight kept coming out with ones, uh, the things that they were doing were too similar to some of mine. So I had to.
You had to change.
I had I had a lot of fun with that, and a lot of fun with the different reskins and everything along the way too.
Well, you've got Fisto, and that's all that matters to me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, actually, if you look, there is a really great Fisto quote on. Oh, is it upside? Oh, there's a couple of ones. There's one. Oh no, repeating blows didn't get it. That, where is it? Upside the head. That's what it is. So look through the yellow. There it is. Yeah, there we go. After a good fisting, they usually come around.
Indeed. That's all you really need to know.
I let the community help me a little bit with selection on that.
Cool. So you've
But
mentioned Design Hacker quite a bit,
yeah.
and it's and Super TNT. Are there any other creators or creations that have inspired you?
Oh, tons. Like I said, people like Odysseus and Nugget and Hitch and trying to think. In the early stages, I did join. There used to be a different seal approval system or whatever, and there was a council for that, and I joined that early on. But the amount of rehashing through things and that sort of thing, it became kind of a too much of a process, and that's kind of why it died down. I think too, is it's too exhausting on everyone.
Mm.
It produced some really good quality stuff, and all of the people that managed to get stuff pushed through on that, I would say all of those ones were really good, even before like changes and refinements were made. They were just solid. Um, yeah, I honestly, with kids and a job and my own content and that sort of thing, I do not find as much time to go through a lot of the newer creators' content and see a lot of the great stuff that they have.
Have you made any customs for any other games?
No,
No.
no. I as I said before, I was even very apprehensive about this. I think the fact that it's or not a solo game, a co-op game, uh, is a big part of why I think it even makes sense to do customs. Like I would never make customs for say Magic the Gathering,
Mm.
because if you, in my mind, if you or anything PvP, because if you play against someone and you beat them with the card, then they're going to say it's overpowered. And if you lose while using the card, then you're going to feel that it's underpowered. So you know what I mean? It's very hard to ever find that balance. Whereas in this,
Mm.
there's no, the bias is always on the same side, I guess, and so I don't have to worry about the people feedback of playing it being from the point of view that would be different from myself or anybody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna come to a close. Before we do, is there anything that we
Oh,
didn't talk about that you really wanted to bring up?
yeah, totally. I wanted to, at the very least, actually put these guys out for a sec. The Shinobi ones,
Ah,
because I
cool.
know we
Show them
touched
off.
base on them very basic.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if I were to talk about a project that has taken the most amount of rework and balancing and rethinking and everything, it would be the Shinobi stuff again.
Yeah.
And it's of one project, it's definitely my passion project. So for those that aren't aware, um, besides the booklet that's here and anything that's on my drive, there are on each one of these cards on the back side of the 5 cards at the very top, those are called path cards. And on the back side of each of those, it'll have deck building rules,
Oh, that's
deck
cool.
customization,
That's good.
and and a little bit of info so that you kind of have an idea and you can take a look at it when you go to start without always having to pull the rule book out and all the rest of that.
Mm.
And then each one of them always, sorry if you were looking at them there, they always have -1 hand size, which in hero form, which is where the balance is supposed to come from, having a different card pool. There are so many playtesters. I wish I had time to go through the old forum posts of a lot of the guys that helped me out with the feedback on this, and some of which was a little bit harsh and brutal. Some people going as far as to say there being no purpose to the design of this. But for the most part, it's been more positive, and the idea is that you'll pick one of those paths, which will open up one of these 4 card pools, unless of course it's the Ronin, the one on the very end. That one's the advanced path that allows you to use all of the cards. But yeah, and each one has its own unique feel. So the easiest and simplest one are the pink ones down at the bottom left. Those are the Kujikiri. Those are the ones that come with when you pick the Onmyoto path, and that those cards are all pretty straightforward. You just read them and do them. They will they'll often cause you to do different effects that feel very similar to other magic or spell cards and stuff that you've seen from like Scarlet Witch or Doctor Strange and that sort of thing. And the hero ability that it grants is not great, but it does give you the mystic trait, which is a big thing into itself,
Yeah.
allowing you to add
Sorcerer
spell
Supreme.
cards and stuff like that.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. All those sorts of things. So it's probably the most powerful and the simplest of the 4 Shinobi. Then you've got next to that one in orange, that's Taijutsu. That one is based around just trying to combo attacks and thwarts and defenses. Taking the same concept of what they would do with a resource, saying, oh, if you paid for this with a strength resource or whatever, but instead making it about what type of card it is, what type of event. And I really enjoyed it making this one because without realizing it you become it becomes very obvious as you're playing it how you have to make your deck, that you cannot just be like, oh, I'm going to throw a whole bunch of punches and make really cool combos and have a bunch of allies and upgrades. It's not going to work. So you really have to like hone in on this idea of, I'm going to focus on being a martial arts master and a handful of the cards from here. And because none of the Shinobi actually restrict you from still picking an aspect, you can choose an aspect that you want to complement with that. So if you really want to do a lot of thwarting, go with Justice, right?
Ronin does, doesn't
That
it?
sort of thing.
Doesn't Ronin say you can't choose another aspect?
That's the one advantage. You're correct on that one.
Okay.
But all the other basic ones, they all allow you to pick an aspect to go with them. So yeah, I very much do not recommend doing the Ronin pass for anyone that's trying this for the first time. You're best off trying at least a couple of the paths to get a feel for how they play, because it definitely, you will find they do none of these aspects quite, or these shinobi play quite the same as what you're used to with different aspects.
We should be playing taijutsu so you can get double kick. That's all you need to worry about. Put 3 double kicks in there and just go sick.
Yeah, that's all you need to do,
Just
is double kick all
double
game.
kick to victory. That's what we proved that last night.
I don't even, I triggered that thing once. I played taijutsu, admittedly very terrible, last
Yesterday.
when we were playing our game last night. At any rate, back on topic. So then the theme of ninjutsu, like I said before, is cloaked, and it's really about trying to throw cloaked statuses around, use them as triggers for different things, and also just card draw, because people love card draw. Now, I don't. In this case, I tried very hard not to make it overpowered. Like, it's still, you have the amount of card draw you're gaining still costs you something, but you're going to cycle your deck a lot more, and you're going to filter through things a little bit more, which this one seemed to need a little bit in order to help its combos come through and that sort of thing. But this one also works better with allies than say taijutsu or bushido.
Cool.
Yeah, and that's the basic gist of that one, is just a bunch of the status going around. And then the last one, bushido, in the top left there, that one's of these shinobi. If shinobi are a passion project for me, this one is like the biggest focus I've had over the whole time, because it has been the most difficult to balance and to try to make it feel the way I wanted it to. And this one, the idea is you're focusing on stats and just your hero, making your hero as buffed as he can be. But because you're a samurai, you're expected to adhere to an oath, to a code, right? So all of these upgrades are all labeled as oaths, and they all pass around samurai counters, or for the most part. There's a few that don't actually use samurai counters. But if you look at the pass card up in the top left, it shows that you can take 2 samurai counters off of any of your bushido oath cards, and it'll ready your hero and draw a card. So it becomes this balance of where all the cards are using up the samurai counters, and you're also wanting to chew up a couple of them every turn just to get that extra ready. Because if you've boosted, say, your attack up to like +4, having an extra ready in a turn is pretty powerful, right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing's off of that, and weapons, utilizing weapons, which was one of the themes that I made sure was on the
turtles. The turtles themselves, yeah. There's the amount of effort that's gone into this is just amazing. I can't believe part one of your feedback was this is pointless. Like, how rude.
Well, the pool was probably about half as big as it is right now.
Yeah.
And to them, what it was is that restriction of -1 hand size.
Yeah.
Was restricting their ability to get anything done so much that they really felt that the cards could be a lot more powerful, and there was a lot of back and forth. And in some cases, the guy I can't even recall exactly who it was, but they weren't wrong.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said the pool was half of what it was is now. I mean, that would have been bad. That would have been hard.
Yeah, it wouldn't have had as much value in it. Yeah.
And now there's a lot more value. The amount of work is amazing. Well, that's it. I'm going to wrap it up there. It's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure talking to you, as it is every time I talk to you. We've had some pretty interesting interactions, and I'm very glad that I got to know you, because we think very similarly. So I think that's sort of why we get along. We're big fans of respect, and not taking any guff from those whippersnappers. I actually got asked I comment on how old I am every episode. Apparently, I've been pointed out every episode. I mentioned that I'm old, and Kaj actually sent me a message. He's like, Kaj, can I ask you a personal question? Is how actually old are you? Like, I'm not saying I'm too old. You don't need to know.
Yeah, I think you're older than me. I'm pretty sure we established that.
Yeah.
So. And I feel pretty old too. So.
Yeah, I'm old.
A couple of crusty old geezers.
Got off our lawn. It's like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for being able to take the time to ignore your work and do this chat instead.
Yeah.
I hope
Anytime. I both apologize for talking your ear off and also regret that we couldn't discuss more things about game design and that sort of thing. Because I feel like you should probably do a sit down at some point, like some of the other guys were saying, about kind of your opinions on a lot of this stuff too. I think maybe really need to hash through your opinions and my opinions on different game design and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm open to a part 2. I've already organised a part 2 with Beretta for season 2. When I get to season 2, I'm going to do another episode with Beretta where we're going to really deep dive in, and I'm more than happy to do that with you as well, man. Yeah, that's the sort of thing that I want as well. I want the original idea for this show was to introduce the creators to new audiences and the existing people in the Discord, and sort of get people a general idea of just why we do what we do, and sort of get to know each other, right? Sort of break down those barriers. But for season 2, I want to really dive into, like you just said, why exactly did you do what you did? Why is this costed 2 instead of costed 3? Where did this mechanic idea come from? How did you make it work? That sort of, and you sort of touched on that a little bit in this one, but when we do part 2,
very briefly talked about. Yeah,
I want to go deep dive
and stuff like
creative limitation. Yeah, you touched on that, which I thought was great. I'm booking you in for part 2 for sure.
Okay, sounds good, man.
Awesome. I'll think about the whole idea of me doing an episode. I'll think about it. We'll see how it goes. This is not meant to be about me. It's meant to be about.
Oh, you're not willing to put yourself in the hot.
No, I'm willing to. I'm not shy or nervous or anything. I mean, I used to host a web show. Like, I'm not nervous. This is not. That wasn't. It wasn't. The intention wasn't to big note me. The intention was to big note all of you guys. So anyway,
I'm just giving you a hard time, man.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. You obviously need to get back, and like I said, we'll come back for part 2. I'll just sign off. If you're watching this on YouTube, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, say hello to Inkwire. Ask him to change his name from Inkwire to Dragon Inklings, because that's what I'm going to do. And check out his stuff. I'll have links in the description for all of his stuff, his G Drive and his TTS. Check it out. If you have even the slightest Inkling is the one. Yeah, bloody hell, I missed it. I missed the perfect.
Why did you cut yourself short in the most obvious pun ever?
I know. It was, what an idiot. That was it would be the best pun ever. Anyway, if you got the slightest inkling for any of the 80s stuff, especially the Turtles and Master Universe, then check it out. Try and beat Shredder and Skeletor. I dare you. On Expert.
Skeletor is there's so many guys in the community that have beaten him up. You can't blame your loss on that.
Okay, maybe I'm just bad at the game.
But if I can just quickly plug that anybody who is interested in any of this stuff or has feedback or anything like that, I definitely welcome it on the Discord, and always enjoy hearing, even if it's criticisms. I don't always. Sometimes they hurt a bit, but usually there's some truth to it somewhere.
Just be polite.
I always.
That's all we're saying.
It.
Just be polite. Be polite and respectful.
Yeah.
Don't say it sucks.
No, but very much. Please come check out our Discord. Check me out. Check out all the other people that have been interviewing as well. It's a very receptive community.
Yeah. There'll be a link to an invite to the Discord in the description, like I have for all these episodes. Take advantage. If you have even the slightest idea that you in your head for something that you want to create. If you want to create a companion to Super Dinosaur, then here's your chance. Join the Discord, contact Inkwire, put your heads together, make some cool stuff. As long as he uses the cloak mechanic, that's all I need. That's all I ask. I want a cloaking Velociraptor. That's what I want. Make it happen.
Actually, he's a T-Rex, but he actually does get the cloak status.
Oh, there you go. Boom. Now you just need to give him a little Velociraptor buddy.
Oh, he has a stealth suit, as all giant robot dinosaurs would have.
That goes without saying. Anyway, thanks again, Inkwire. I really appreciate it. And all of you listening, as always, please make sure that you tell the people that you love them as often as you can. Take care. Thanks. Bye.